All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming along to the October public meeting of the Gungahlin Community Council. My name's Peter Elford. I'm the President of the Community Council. We have quite a big agenda, big because we've got some important people here and some important topics, some of them near and dear to our hearts around the town centre, and some of them bigger issues that are more at a global level, and we're fortunate enough to have with us Minister Shane Rattenbury to talk about how we at the ACT level are going to deal with climate change. So our first speaker will be Minister for Climate Change Shane Rattenbury. We'll then have a brief address from Deepak Raj Gupta, the new MLA for Yerrabi, and we'll also have the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development talking about the town centre planning refresh and the draft territory plan that is supporting that. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Shane up and go through the new climate strategy for the ACT. Thanks very much, Shane.
Excellent. Let me just check the audio is going through.
How's that sounding?
Hang on. Yep, no, I was just on mute. You're all good.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for the invite to come along tonight to talk about the new climate strategy. And hello to everybody watching online. I'm going to stand over here, even though most people on that side of the room, because this is where the camera is, but hopefully you'll be able to hear me just fine. Thanks, Peter. This new climate strategy is designed to carry the ACT from now through to 2025. And it comes in a context of increasingly clear global evidence of the pressures of climate change, the impacts that it's having on our planet, and the need to urgently cut global emissions. Most of the scientists are saying that by 2030 we really need to have turned our emissions profile around and be starting to make significant reductions. We're also, of course, seeing significant public pressure, strong community expectation that we cut our emissions. The school climate strike is one example of that. The ACT was the first state or territory jurisdiction in Australia to declare a climate emergency in May this year when the Assembly passed a motion on that. And we, of course, are seeing significant community views coming forward, and certainly the ACT government's own research is indicating our Canberra community has a strong expectation of the government taking action. Thanks, Peter. The climate impacts are evident. We are seeing all sorts of, manifestations of that around the world, and certainly in the ACT we are not immune from that. This January, for anyone who was home during January, we had record-breaking heat waves here in the ACT. The average temperature in January was 34.5 degrees in Canberra, which is 6 degrees above the long-term average, 4 degrees above any previous record set here in Canberra. And of course we had our 4 days above 40 degrees Celsius, which is a new record for the ACT. We have never seen that before. We also had 24 days in the summer that were above 35 degrees Celsius. That's 4 times more than the long-term average. So a really extraordinary summer in terms of local heat impact. These are examples of the sort of predictions we've seen for the future, and I think in some ways probably came ahead of schedule in terms of some of the modelling that we have seen. So these are real impacts locally that we are experiencing ourselves. The response that the government is prepared to take us through to 2025 come in 2 documents. One is the climate change strategy, which is very much focused on how we reduce our emissions and things like a just transition. And then there's the living infrastructure plan, which is about essentially more greenery in the city to help protect us from some of those heat effects. And I'll talk a little bit about each of the documents. This graph shows you where the ACT emissions have been and where we want to go in the future. So the black part of the graph on the left-hand side is the historical emissions. You can see they were largely steadily climbing with a bit of a dip there. The section highlighted in red is what has been happening to our emissions here in the ACT as we have gone to 100% renewable electricity. As you might have seen in the press, we've essentially just about achieved that. The last wind farm came on stream about 2 weeks ago that will get us to that target point. And so that'll get us down to our planned reduction of 40% reduction in emissions by 2020. We are set to achieve that. The Assembly has now legislated targets going forward into the future. We intend to be zero net emissions by 2045, and we have set a series of interim targets along the way to measure how we're going. I think these interim targets are really important for a couple of reasons. The current members of the Assembly most probably won't be here in 2045, so it's easy to stand here today and promise that because it's a long way in the future. So the interim targets are a way of measuring how we're going along the way. It also means if we get to 2025 or 2030 and we have missed a target, we will know that and we'll be able to sort of redouble our efforts, work out perhaps where we're not having the success we need to, and be able to think about what adjustments we need to make along the way, rather than getting to 2045 and suddenly going, crap, we missed our target. So I think those interim targets are really important. This is a really interesting graph in terms of the challenge that lies ahead of us. The chart on the left-hand side is what the ACT's emissions profile looked like in 2012 before we started the transition to 100% renewable electricity. You can see the big red section is the emissions that came from electricity generation. The blue section was transport, and the grey section was gas. These are the three main bits of the diagram. Over here, this is what we model will happen next year once we get to 100% renewable electricity. All the electricity emissions are gone. Transport jumps up to, well, about 62%, over 60%. And that all comes from us driving around doing the stuff we do in Canberra. This is not big industrial emissions from mining or anything like that, because of course we don't have any of that in the ACT. 95% of this comes from private motor vehicle use. We then see gas becomes a much bigger proportion of our profile. And this is quite challenging as well, but more than 20%. And then waste is also an issue for us that we'll need to think about. So let me just go on to some of the specific areas and talk about those in a bit more detail. As I said, overall the climate strategy seeks to mitigate or reduce our emissions, think about adaptation, and particularly think about a just transition, the idea of how we do this in a fair way. And I'll come back to that a bit later. It does seek to integrate with our planning strategy, our transport strategy, and our housing strategy, all of which are being either just been released by government or the transport strategies coming this year. So within government, there's been a process to make sure each of these are coordinated and heading in the same direction. Thanks, Peter. I'll talk about a couple of the specific areas. As I've said, transport is the big deal. This is going to be a really hard challenge for us, and the key way that we are going to deal with our transport emissions is to electrify our transport fleet and to make sure we promote alternatives to private motor vehicle use. So better public transport, better walking and cycling infrastructure, giving people better alternatives so that we don't have to drive every time we go somewhere. You know, we are living in a car city, a city that was built for the private motor vehicle. It will take a long time to turn that around, but we need to start making the steps now if we are going to tackle this sector of emissions. We've committed to deliver a zero emissions bus fleet by 2040. Now that might seem a long way away, but bear in mind that our buses have a usual lifespan of 15 to 20 years. What that means is the buses we start to buy in the next couple of years need to be zero emission buses. And fortunately, electric buses are probably right on the verge of being good, reliable alternatives. You might have seen Minister Steele just released a report last week of a trial we did on a bus that's 3 years old now, and there were some problems with that bus, but in that time, the technology is coming along as it is very quickly in a lot of these spaces. We've put in here an idea of car-free days. Thanks, Peter. This is a photo of a car-free day in Paris. This has been, for me, one of the surprisingly controversial elements of the strategy. Car-free days happen around the world in big cities. They're where you sort of shut down a part of the city for the day to give the community an opportunity to experience the city differently. In Canberra, you might think of the Multicultural Festival or Enlighten as smaller scale examples. We'd like to have some more of these. You can imagine perhaps a couple of streets in Belconnen Town Centre being shut down for a Saturday to enable us to have those kind of festivals. It is not, as some have suggested, in response to this strategy, the government wanting to ban you driving your car. We are not going to shut Northbourne Avenue at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. This is not what is being talked about on car-free days. Peter, thanks. We've also, as I said, want to really improve walking and cycling infrastructure. I've used the expression we want to Copenhagenise Canberra. The reason I said that is in Copenhagen, 50% of journeys are undertaken by bicycle. Canberra at the moment is in single digit figures, so we're a long way away from that. Canberra's also a pretty spread out city, and this is not going to be suitable for everybody. But what we do need to do is build more walking and cycling infrastructure that makes it easier for people. You know, there are parts of the city at the moment that don't even have a footpath. So it's pretty hard to think about walking somewhere where you don't have that. We need better cycling infrastructure so that people feel safer to ride. We need better lighting in areas so that particularly women feel safe travelling at night. So there's some of the challenges that lie ahead of us. We have already released a zero emission vehicle action plan. I released this with Minister Fitzharris about 18 months ago. And it seeks to start putting in place some of the things that will make it easier to get to electric vehicles, but also hydrogen vehicles. We are sort of trying to, it's not clear which of these will dominate at the moment. It appears electric vehicles at the moment, but we want to keep it open. This also includes things like electric bikes. We're starting with government leadership. The government has set a goal to replace our vehicle fleet with electric vehicles over 3 years, because our government vehicles are on a 3-year lease cycle. And so as we replace them, we're going to replace them with electric vehicles. We've already started, and it's really exciting. The vehicles that are coming into the fleet now are showing an 80% reduction in running costs compared to the petrol vehicles they're replacing. So what this is meaning is that by just tweaking our leases to a 4-year lease instead of a 3-year lease, we can offset the upfront costs, and it's the same cost for government over a 4-year cycle as having a petrol vehicle. Now, what we also know is that most experts are saying that electric vehicles will be about the same price as a petrol vehicle within 3 to 4 years. So for the average Canberra citizen, in about 3 or 4 years' time, if you go out to get a new car, if the price for an electric vehicle is the same and the running costs are 80% lower, you would be mad not to buy an electric vehicle at that point in time, unless you've got a really specific use of driving long distances or something. But most people drive to work and back, maybe via sport or the daycare centre, and these vehicles have got a 200 kilometre range. No one drives 200 kilometres. Most people don't drive 200 kilometres in a day. So this is the sort of information we're trying to make available to the community. Energy and buildings and how we plan the city are going to be a really important part of this strategy. We want to maintain 100% renewable electricity supply in the city. Now that we've got there, we intend to maintain that into the future. The buildings we build today will still be standing in 2045, so we need to be thinking now about how they will be zero emissions. One of the key elements of this strategy is the government has given a clear indication that we need to move away from natural gas. This is a big change for Canberra. For a long time, we have been told that gas is the clean and cheap alternative. It is no longer those things. It was clean compared to the electricity that came from black or brown coal power stations. But now that we get our electricity from wind and solar, gas is just another fossil fuel, natural gas. It's also not that cheap anymore. For anyone who's noticed their gas bill recently, the price has skyrocketed in recent years. And part of it is if you no longer belong to the gas network, you instantly save $250 to $300 a year in gas connection fees, let alone the price of the gas. The other thing we know is that the electric devices are now cheaper and they're more efficient. And so in the climate strategy, there's a number of case studies, but it is generally, if you change over to electric devices these days, you can save at least $500 a year in your household compared to having gas devices. Now, we are not saying, again, as some people have suggested, we want you to go out tomorrow and rip out your gas appliances. What we are signalling is that over the next 20 years, we need to phase gas out in this city. If you have an electric heating system at the moment, it will reach the end of its natural life at some point. They have a life of 15 to 25 years. I guess what we're trying to say is when that breaks down and you go to replace it, we want you to replace it with an electric system. We're not asking you to throw away a good one in the next 12 months. I want to be really clear about that because some have suggested that is what we are trying to do. That is not the case. I think government leadership is a really important part of the story. We are able to demonstrate what's possible, and also I think there's a moral obligation on government to do the right thing. So things like the government bus fleet are an important part of it. Also, all new government buildings are intended to be all electric as part of demonstrating where we want to go in the future. We've just built, as you might know, the Margaret Henry School in Taylor is an all-electric school. It's the first one in the ACT. It's a great school, and it's, despite the fact that it doesn't have a gas system, it's very comfortable, it's well designed, and it's therefore fossil fuel free. This is the way of the future. The next one's just about to be commissioned in Molonglo. These are the sort of things that government will do in our own operations to reduce government emissions and also teach industry how to do some of these things differently in the future. Actually, the other thing I should mention on there, I'll come to the truck in a moment. Another area is the health system. We're just about to build the big new emergency department out at Canberra Hospital on the south side. We're thinking now carefully about how do we do that in a way that enables a 24-hour operation, but does it in a greenhouse-friendly way. These are the sort of things we need to think about. They may not be the obvious things, but actually Canberra Hospital is a huge consumer of energy. So we need to make sure it's doing that in a way that's climate-friendly. Thanks, Peter. Canberra is getting a reputation as being a centre of excellence for innovation and for renewable energy. And that is meaning more people want to partner with us. So that explains this truck. When I said we want to get to our government fleet being an electric fleet, that's for things like our sedans. Things like fire trucks and that are harder, we thought. But it turns out because of our reputation, Rosenbauer, who build these electric fire trucks, they're an Austrian company, but they're partnering up with the ACT because they see us as an innovative city that is taking our climate challenge seriously. And so they are partnering with us as the first city in the Southern Hemisphere to get an electric fire truck. We think we can pull this off in the next couple of years. I can assure you they actually do have a diesel tank on the back for real emergencies. But for most jobs that our fire trucks will do, they will go on an electric drivetrain when this one comes into our system. It's the same price as an existing fire truck. It performs like an existing fire truck, but it will be emissions free for most of its work. Waste is a tricky area. At the moment, all of our food scraps go to landfill unless you run a compost at home. Landfill then emits methane gases, which are a really potent greenhouse gas. So we need to get a full food and garden waste collection going in the city and make sure we're processing that waste to capture those gases. We also need to make sure we deal with commercial establishments. You know, big clubs like this, food courts, the convention centre, these places that have large volumes, we need to make sure we're getting their, particularly food waste, not just going to the landfill, but actually being recycled into quality compost, capturing the gases, these sort of things. Thanks. A really important part of this strategy is it's not a static document. It covers us up to 2025, but even in that time frame, I expect there will be technological changes. I expect that some of the things in the strategy will go really well. Some of them may not go as well as we hope right now, and so this will also be a static document. Hand on heart today, I cannot tell you that this strategy will exactly get us to our targets for 2025. I think it lays a lot of the right foundations, but we also need to be clear about the fact that it will evolve over time. We also want to try and tackle what are called Scope 3 emissions. They're also embodied emissions. Every time we buy something, there's a certain amount of greenhouse gases that have gone into making that. Now, at the moment, we don't have to account for those, but it is an area that will emerge in the future, and we're starting to think about that already in the ACT. How do we begin to measure those things? Certainly as a wealthy city, relatively, compared to many other cities in the world, we are a high-consuming city. We have a big footprint. So how do we think about dealing with these embodied emissions that come in? The televisions we buy, the cars we buy, the fridges we buy, all of these things have a lot of energy packed into them already. One area we've started to have an experiment with this is that we've just taken a proposal to the National Consumer Affairs Ministers meeting. I'm the Consumer Affairs Ministers in my other portfolios, to create a right to repair. At the moment, so many of the devices we buy cannot be repaired because there's not spare parts available, or because if you take them apart, they break, or the manufacturer only repairs them themselves. And so it means if your device breaks down, most often it ends up going to landfill, which is a terrible waste of resources. So that's a great consumer outcome, but also has environmental implications as well. Thank you. A lot of these new policies do put the ACT at the cutting edge. We continue to be a national and in some cases international leader in these policy areas. And so I think that will continue to position Canberra as a place to come and do business, as well as making sure that we are dealing with our part of responding to climate change. The reverse auction process that we ran to get to 100% renewable electricity has generated an estimated $500 million of investment in the ACT over the 20-year life of that program, and it's creating new job opportunities. I was just at Neoen Energy, which is a wind company. They have their Australian headquarters in Canberra. They've now got 24 staff. They had none in the ACT 5 years ago, and they operate their headquarters from there, and they are controlling wind farms all over Australia from Marcus Clark Street. And they're just one example of the sort of businesses that have come to Canberra. We have at the CIT now the only accredited wind training program in the entire Southern Hemisphere, where people are being trained how to build and operate wind farms at CIT in Bruce because of Canberra's reputation. Thanks, Peter. And one more, actually. I said I want to talk about this idea of a just transition. One of the things that this strategy tries to be really honest with the community about is that there will be changes. To get to being a climate-friendly city, we will have to do some things differently. And we're trying to be really upfront about that so that people know what's coming and we can begin to think about how we work through them. Some things will cost money. Some things will be opportunities in terms of generating new jobs and new income. So we need to think about this. But in terms of jobs, we've said we want to have a bus fleet that's zero emissions. That means no more diesel buses. But right now at Action, we have a team of diesel bus mechanics whose jobs won't be needed in 15 or 20 years' time when we have a fleet of electric buses. So we need to make sure that we think about how do we create transition opportunities for them, retrain them into new jobs, not just discard them because we don't need it anymore. We also need to be really mindful of low-income households as we do these changeovers to different products. How do we do that? And the strategy talks a lot about how we protect our low-income households as we move through this. One area that I'm really proud of, thanks Peter, is the commitment in the strategy that we will have minimum energy performance standards for rental buildings. For too long in Canberra, renters have lived in homes that are freezing cold in winter, too hot in summer, have high energy bills, and frankly have a lower quality of life. We think renters deserve to live in well-insulated homes that are comfortable and cost-effective. So we will move to a position where if you want to rent a home out in the ACT, it has to meet certain energy performance standards. I think it's a matter of justice as much as it's a matter of environmental policy. We'll need a couple of years transition because some homes will need to be upgraded. Landlords can write that off on their tax. This is the right policy for a city that has such temperature extremes in our lifetimes. Thanks, Peter. The Living Infrastructure Plan, let me finish by talking about this a little bit. If we can move on to the next graph. This is driven by the fact that the urban heat island effect is very real in Canberra. This diagram, which you don't need to understand the details, I'll just sort of explain it. The government commissioned a report a couple of years ago from the CSIRO to study the urban heat island effect specifically in Canberra. We kind of know the broad principles, but we want to look at this city in particular. This graph demonstrates some of the hotspots, and you can see Gungahlin features prominently, of course, because it's an area, as a new area, that doesn't have as many trees as some of the other parts of the city. But one case study in this report was that at a certain point in the day, on a hot February day, down by the lake, where you have the lake, of course, which has a cooling effect and there's plenty of trees, it was 28.8 degrees. At the same time, in a suburb in Gungahlin, it was 41 degrees because you didn't get that cooling effect of either a water body and or the trees. This underlines how important living infrastructure is. Now, living infrastructure includes lots of things. Trees, of course, best known, but it can also be green roofs on buildings, green walls on buildings, water bodies and things like this. So the Living Infrastructure Plan includes a number of things. I'll highlight just a couple. The first is to increase our tree canopy in the city to 30%. Right now, Canberra has about 21% tree canopy, but that is unevenly spread across the city, as I touched on in the previous area. So some suburbs like Turner have about 30%. Some suburbs in Gungahlin have only 4%. So we've got a job to do across this city to protect the city from the future, which is expected to be hotter and drier. We also want to have a surface permeability target. This is the idea that we should have not as much concrete or asphalt on our blocks, but more soil surfaces that firstly you can plant trees and shrubs on, but secondly are cooler, and thirdly can absorb rainfall when it does come. So this is going to be a really important part going forward. What it will mean is when a new house gets built or a new apartment building gets built, the block will need to have at least 30% permeable surfaces to allow that tree planting and other cooling effects to go on. The Oasis program is a really interesting one. It means we need to look across the city and think about where we have cool places so that in those heat waves, residents have somewhere cool to go to escape the heat. It might mean we need a water body in each suburb, or we need a particular park that is specially designed to be a really cool place that people can seek refuge from the heat. These are the sort of pieces of work we need to do in the future. Thanks, Peter. These are just some examples from other places of what living infrastructure can look like. Probably won't look exactly like this in Canberra, but it gives you a feel for the sort of things we're talking about. And I think living infrastructure not only has environmental benefits, things like storing carbon, providing biodiversity corridors through our city. There are, of course, the social and health benefits we've talked about, the cooling effect, the fact that it's just good for our mental health and well-being to have greenery. It's beautiful, it makes us feel good. And there are, of course, economic benefits as well around it is a cost-effective form of cooling infrastructure in our city. Thanks, Peter. The last thing I wanted to talk about is just the role of the community in this strategy. As I've touched on a number of times, we really need the community to be on board for this. To get to 100% renewable electricity has been relatively easy. None of us have had to do anything. We flick the power point, the electricity still comes through, it's fine. But as you can see from the issues around gas and transport, dealing with our waste, we will need the community to play a part in this. The government cannot do it all. And so we're trying to be really upfront about that. We want to do it over a period of time, which is why we're talking about some big ideas now, because this needs to be an orderly transition. We are not asking you to upend your lives, but we are signalling things will need to be done differently in the future. And we will be looking to partner with community organisations, with businesses to help us achieve this. Thanks, Peter. So, look, I've whipped through this in a hurry tonight, necessarily so. There are 98 actions in the two strategies, so there's a lot of detail in there. The documents are available online if you'd like to go and have a look at them in more detail. And I'm happy to take some questions now for as long as our chairman allows me, if there's areas that you'd like to get a little bit more detail on or get some clarity on. So thanks very much for taking the time to have a listen and letting me sharing some of this with you.
Thank you, Shane. All right. Yes, call for questions. One from the front. Just for a second, I'll give you the microphone so the others can hear.
That's fantastic. You can throw the microphone around the room. It's great.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the, you've talked about energy generation with solar and wind, but what about energy storage? What are the proposals there?
Yes, this is a sort of both a local issue and also a big national issue across the electricity grid. Wind and solar are the cheapest new forms of energy. They are going to dominate our grid much more in the future, but they are, of course, intermittent. No sun at night time, these sort of things. So storage is going to be really important. There will be two answers to it. One will be pumped hydro, things like snow hydro too, but also smaller scale versions, and batteries. We have started rolling batteries out at a residential scale in the ACT, and we have also just started to commission the first large-scale battery in Canberra, which we expect to have online in about 2 years. So we're beginning this. We need much more of it in the future, and we need it done on a big East Coast scale as well, so the entire national electricity market is connected together and we can share power so that when it's not windy in South Australia, we can send power in that direction and vice versa.
Yep. Next question.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Just like to say that up front. So very encouraging. Look, I'll stick to the active travel topic. I'm a bit of a cycling advocate, so I'm on board with those strategies there. You've probably already heard from Pedal Power. They've got a big bent about infrastructure maintenance, not just new programs. So yes. I'll leave that to them. However, I've been involved in a couple of community groups that are involving older people and retirees, which I'll soon be one. And a number of people have taken over e-bikes, yes. And there's been a significant increase in riders using e-bikes who normally wouldn't have jumped on board and ridden a bicycle. So if there's some sort of strategy to encourage use of e-bikes, subsidised, or have government departments demonstrating use by using e-bikes, that would be good. The next one's a bit more tricky for you. It's a bit of a challenge that I'm an avid mountain biker as well, and I've seen in the news that you want to make Canberra a mountain biking capital again, and it has suffered a fair bit over the last decade or so. Now, one of the things that has also contributed to that has been destruction of mountain bike trails where you've got plantation. So you've got pine plantation. Now, one, you're cutting down trees, so you're getting rid of the green. I know there's an economic cost because they're there to be cut to be used for timber, but I'm wondering whether it's worthwhile looking at the challenge of saying, let's maintain those forests. They're not gum trees, they're fir trees, but still they're trees. And I can attest to what it's like riding out there in Sparrow Hill and Majura, where those trees are knocked down, and you then ride across some rough trail, the temperature difference, you absolutely cook riding through there as opposed to the forest. So I'd just like to put that proposal or challenge to say, how about looking at the economic feasibility of maintaining what we've got, encouraging tourists, people who then ride mountain bikes can get exercise and commute on them, and just maintaining at least what we've got and helping promote not chopping more trees down.
Sure, let me take those in order. Firstly, e-bikes. I think e-bikes are a fantastic opportunity for the future, and they're in the strategy. They're in that zero emission vehicle strategy I talked about, because whether you're a bit older and they can help you get around, or even if you're not as fit, they're a great alternative and they're quite cost effective. I always use the case that I had a woman who worked in my office last term of the Assembly. She'd had 2 kids, being busy as a parent, she hadn't kept as fit as she would have liked. She lived in Duffy and worked in my office in the city, and it was too far for her to ride. She maybe was able to do it once a week. As soon as she got an e-bike, she rode every day, because the e-bike just helped her overcome that little fitness gap, which she wasn't thrilled about, that she had the fitness gap, but it made it possible for her, and I think it's a great example of the difference that e-bikes can make. You might be pleased to know that we've actually now created a system in ACT government where our public servants can salary sacrifice to get an e-bike. Just as you can salary sacrifice your car and stuff, you can now salary sacrifice an e-bike. So that's designed to make it easier for people. On the issue of the pine forests, it is a tricky one. Historically in the ACT, our pine forests have been working forests that just have a cycle of being planted and cut down. I agree with you, potentially the value of them is higher left as a standing forest. There is a study that comes out of New Zealand where they have done this work, and they show that the value of the forest standing was more than they would get from cutting it down and selling the timber. I've asked the Minister, Mick Gentleman, who's responsible for this area, to do a similar study in the ACT. So far, I've not convinced him of that. So that's my personal view, that we should do that study, because I think probably if you look at all the benefits of the forests, and the pine plantations it's a pretty competitive environment. They're not that valuable these days. So I think that probably is the way of the future, but there's a debate going on that one in the government.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. We've got quite a lot of questions. I'm got a bit of a queue here, so if we can snap through them.
Okay.
Just here and then here.
Yes, just wanted to know, with this net zero emission plan, is the federal government going to do anything to assist the territory government, or are they don't really care about Canberra trying to bring all these policies in? Because I think I know the answer, but I'm just hoping maybe from inside you might know something else. And yeah.
No, the short answer is no. I mean, the federal government thinks this is not the right policy. Our strategy is based on what the scientists are telling us we should be achieving. So I think the federal government should have a similar policy, but I think we know the federal government's position on this. It is disappointing, but in the absence of good federal government leadership, what we are seeing is that state and territory governments and local councils are getting on with it. So I have some optimism that Australia is heading in the right direction despite the federal government.
Yeah. So you're not getting any funding from them?
We are forming partnerships with groups like ARENA and the like that sort of are outside of some of that direct federal government control. But no, we're not getting no support. I think Barnaby Joyce described our policies as crazy.
What about the Climate Council?
We've got that issue. We'll keep moving on to another question, I think.
Sure.
Right, just over here. Right. So.
Yeah, like to go first? Thank you. So I was looking for something, how you reconcile your policy, environmental policy, with population policy. So driving is one factor, but a lot of emissions is related to consumption and what people eat and what people do, how we store. So as I understand, territory has a policy to increase population continuously going forward. And you also have a policy to bring down emissions. So how do you reconcile that? Do you revisit that policy down the track?
This is a very tricky question that we do not have a good answer to. Canberra is growing very rapidly. We are one of the fastest growing regions of Australia. Our population is scheduled to reach 500,000 by 2030, I think it is.
It's not growing. We are allowing to grow here.
We have no way of... Well, this is an interesting question. I don't propose to put a wall around Canberra. And, you know, we do live in a country in which people are free to move wherever they wish. And Canberra has very low unemployment. We have a number of universities. People are coming here at a rate of knots. The government could seek to slow that down by, for example, not... The University of New South Wales wants to open a new uni here. We could decline that opportunity. But, you know, that is not where the direction the city is going in.
Cool, thank you. Next question.
One of the ways...
Oh, sorry, actually, one more thought on that, just before I go on. You did talk, though, about, you know, you can have a large population, but a lot depends on the footprint of that population. As Canberrans, we have a massive footprint compared to people in other places. And so, for me, the thing we can do in the short term, in the absence of being able to control population growth, is focus very much on reducing the footprint. If we can have 500,000 people living here at a much smaller footprint, then we will be having a better environmental outcome.
One of the ways of reducing transport costs is to reduce the distance that people have to travel.
Yes.
A little bit later on, and one of the main reasons for people travelling is to go to work. A little bit later on in this session tonight, we will be hearing from the Gungahlin Fresh people who are proposing that the amount of office space in Gungahlin be dropped yet again, so that we're going to have less people working in Gungahlin than has been planned for. Aren't your departments now working at odds to each other? Can you start to get the planning people to start to think about things beyond just simply reducing the cost of energy?
It's a fair point, Kevin, and I think that what I can, you know, the most frank answer I can give to that is we are trying to create different directions here, but it doesn't happen overnight. You know, and there are different views within government on how some of these things should happen. And so some of these are contested policy spaces. Some of them are about changing government direction. You know, it's very clear that we need to make a more compact city going forward for the reasons you've touched on. We cannot keep spreading out. Every new suburb consumes bushland, native habitat. You know, we've seen some commentators recently saying we should open up the entire Cowan Plateau for 100 years of land supply. You can imagine the travel that would go on to bring people in and out of Cowan, aside from getting the infrastructure out there. I don't support that direction. We do need to have a more compact city, but even that is not popular in some parts of Canberra, so there are not universal views on these things. I am concerned that we are not having enough employment in the outer areas. You know, historically in Canberra, Belconnen, Tuggeranong had big government offices put into them when they were opened up, and you know, the long history of Gungahlin is we've not had those opportunities here. You know, we've brought some here, but I think we could do better. So I think that would be an interesting discussion later tonight.
Right, stand here.
Just a question about the 30% tree cover.
Yep.
How would you propose that we get those newly built suburbs out here in Gungahlin that are sitting at 4% all the way up to 30%, instead of just waiting for the trees to keep growing?
A couple of things will happen. First of all, we're just going to need to plant a lot more trees, both in the public realm and also in private space. And so now that we've set this target, we've got a big job to do over the next 20 years to really think about how to get more trees out there, how to encourage our community to value trees. There are parts of this city where the government has planted trees and the residents have put them out because they won't be able to park where the tree went. You know, so not everyone in this city values trees equally. So there's an education component and there's a practical thing of how do we get enough trees out there in an affordable way, because it's a big job. We need probably 400,000 to 500,000 trees planted over the next 15, 20 years. That's a big job.
I had a question here still. Yep. And one over here, and one back in the corner.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. The middle of this winter, my ducted gas heating failed, which is a 20-year-old gas heating. So I went to the market looking for an electrical system, and after all the rebates and subsidies, I was quoted $9,000, where my replacement gas system, which is a 6.5 star system, would have costed me $2,600. And also, after doing a lot of research, I figured out the electric system may not be able to keep up with the -5, -4s what we reach here. So what kind of strategy or support would the government provide in the future to help people like me to replace the gas system with the electrical system? And is the technology there yet to support Canberra climate?
The technology is certainly there. I think that, and we've just gone through this as well. My sister had the same thing happen this year. So I've had this she rang me up going, what do I do? So we've gone through it, I've gone through it in a really practical way myself. I think part of it is that some of our tradies are not, they've done it one way for a long time. And so we need to do things like provide training courses at CIT on what the new systems are like and how they work. So it will be a gradual transition. So there's a lot of steps we need to get the technology more available. The price will come down, and we need some training to encourage people to. The tradies at the moment will just turn up and say, just replace the one you've already got. I know how to fit it in for you. So these are some of the challenges we have to overcome. So yes, your case study is a very interesting one.
Got an online one.
Yes.
More of a comment than a question, but I'll give you a chance to respond. Interesting comment regarding increasing the tree canopy, yet any tree deemed to be less than 12 metres can be removed at any time without consultation or approval.
Yes, so as part of the the Living Infrastructure Plan, there will be a review of the Tree Protection Act, and I think these are the sort of questions we are going to need to contemplate because, and we're certainly seeing it. There's a lot of frustration in some of the older suburbs at the moment where there's a lot of renewal going on, redevelopment. The blocks are being largely cleaned out, and a lot of the existing trees are being lost, and so there's a lot of frustration, and I share a lot of that frustration, and we need to, I think, re-examine some of those rules because we're not getting the outcomes we need.
Hi, Shane. So currently the power bill, the electricity bill, it's ridiculously expensive. So with your policy, would that going to be going down or it's going to go more?
For electricity bills?
Yeah.
Yeah, interestingly, the ACT has the either lowest or second lowest electricity prices in Australia currently. That said, we're a cold city, so we do use a lot of electricity. There has been some increase as a result of moving to 100% renewable electricity. But on the flip side, the government's also put in place energy efficiency programs that can also save you a lot of money if you participate in them. So for me, that's part of that discussion about a just transition. We need to make sure that there will be some costs, but there's also some opportunities. If you participate in the energy efficiency scheme, you can save up to $5.85 a week on your electricity bill through a series of small changes in your household. So we're trying to make sure that, and electricity prices have gone up for a range of reasons, some of which are a result of government policy, some are for other reasons. We need to make sure we put in place the things on the other side to help out as well.
And the final question, so you talked about all this data being done by the scientists and professionals and stuff, and you're taking those recommendations. And also seeing the medical professionals and all the scientists are talking about the cannabis one. They're saying it's strongly object to those ones. It's going to cause mental and a lot of issues in the society. So how come one end you take the advice from the professionals and the other end you reject it? So how do you decide those things?
I don't agree with your characterisation that we've not followed the evidence when it comes to the cannabis laws. Like the climate policy area, there are contested views. There are people with different views. I very firmly hold the view on cannabis that right now people use cannabis. They're doing it every day. But it's illegal. And so that means two things. One, people can end up in the criminal justice system, which is not what we want. We should treat cannabis use as a health issue, not a criminal justice issue. The second thing is those mental health problems and the like exist now, but people are not going to their doctor because it's illegal and there's stigma around cannabis. I would rather be in a situation where it's not criminal and people feel comfortable to talk to their doctor. There is no doubt that for some people who have predisposition to mental health issues, cannabis is a bad thing to be involved with. I want them to go and to talk to their doctor about that, not sort of do it surreptitiously because it's illegal. I think that's a better place for us to be.
Okay. All right, I'm getting close to the last of the questions. One over here.
Just a quick one. You talked about people renting in Canberra and the energy rating. requirement that's going to come. I think it's about 38% of people in Canberra rent, or somewhere around that figure. That's a massive amount of homes to actually... Okay, yeah, sorry. I'm talking about renting in Canberra. It's about 38% of people rent in Canberra.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge amount of properties which are in all different suburbs and all different condition. To achieve an energy rating, some of the older buildings are probably... it's probably cheaper to knock them down than try to respectively, a south-facing building with double brick or something like that, than what it is to try and get an energy rating. Rather than have an energy rating and then say below that level you can't rent to people, it might be better if you have an energy rating, and then maybe the people who rent can get a discount based from the people who rent from the lower level of rating as a percentage of their bill.
It's an interesting idea. Firstly, to be clear, I mean, there are plenty of rental properties at the moment that meet the standard, so we're not talking about the most likely outcome, or my preference would probably be a 3-star rating. So not a 6, just a sort of, I guess for me, a basic minimum of what will provide a reasonably comfortable home and provide significant energy bill savings. To get most houses to 3 stars, you can do it through wall and ceiling insulation and some draft ceiling. So that sort of package is in the order of $3,000 to $4,000 of expenses, which, as I say, the landlord can write off on tax, and I think is quite achievable, and doesn't require sort of a massive transformation of the rental stock. So that's the sort of model we've got in mind. So hopefully that clarifies, because your point is right. If we suddenly had to renovate 38% of the homes in Canberra, we'd have a real problem. But that's not what we're going to have to do.
All right, thank you. Last question.
Thanks for the presentation, Shane. I just wondered, last weekend I went for a bit of hubby and I went for a bit of a test drive in an electric vehicle, which was fantastic. They were very impressive. However, the cost is up there, and acknowledge that there are cost savings to be made on fuel, etc., running costs. However, I just wondered if you could talk about some of the rebates that may be planned for electric vehicles to encourage.
First of all, you're right. The electric vehicles are expensive at the moment. As I said, that price is expected to drop rapidly in the next couple of years. I don't want to plug any particular brands, but Hyundai have just brought out a new vehicle, the Ioniq, which has come out at around $45,000 retail. Now, that's still a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but we're not talking Teslas at $120,000. That's kind of the crazy end of the market for enthusiasts. Good luck to them. We need to get vehicles that are coming out at much cheaper prices, and the Hyundai is the first one that's coming on a large scale. The prices will keep coming down. The ACT already has the most generous rebates in Australia for electric vehicles. You pay 0 stamp duty on an electric vehicle in the ACT, and you get a 20% discount on registration each year. I think that's probably about as far as we can go. If you look at models overseas, it's been national governments that are providing the bigger tax breaks. So in Norway, where 50% of vehicles being bought now are electric vehicles, the federal government there provides a big rebate. We as the ACT don't have the capability to do that. We would need the national government to participate. So I'm not saying to people, go out right now and buy electric vehicle, you must do it. Some people can afford to. Part of our government fleet strategy is that as those vehicles come out of government lease cycle, we're trying to create a second-hand market which will create some more affordable vehicles as well. So again, I don't expect this will happen in the next 12 months, but it will happen. I guess it's the direction. And perhaps I can finish there, Peter, by saying thanks for the questions. There's been some really good questions tonight. What the questions have highlighted are there's some hard details to still be worked out. This document is about setting a direction we need to go in. There's lots of implementation work still to be done around it, and you can expect to see lots of consultation processes on these elements as we work through them. So hopefully I've given you a sense tonight of where we're going, and hopefully answering the questions and being a bit frank about the fact that there are still some questions to be worked out and there's still some technology to be rolled out. You have a sense that this goes back to what I said before, it is very much a dynamic document, but hopefully it has given you a really clear sense of both where things are going and some of the challenges that lie ahead. So thanks very much for the chance to present, Peter.
Yep. Thank you very much, Shane. Yes, the opportunity around the town centre and reducing travel costs is, I think, is a big one from Gungahlin, and we may come back to you on that. So thank you very much for coming out tonight and sharing the overall strategy with us. We'll just have, before we get Deepak up, Prasad was going to just give us a little bit of an overview of the upcoming Diwali festival.
Namaste to all of you. Namaste to online viewers. My name is Prasad Tipineni. I'm living in Gungahlin for the last 10 years, and I'm with the Gungahlin Community Council for the last 8 years. Gungahlin is a booming place, and I came from India. I would like to share the Diwali festival that largely we celebrate across the globe, and we are celebrating Diwali on 21st in Parliament, organized by Hindu Council of Australia. We were thinking about in the Gungahlin Community Council, we want to bring the more cultural diversity and present more of the population that's living here and the cultures and to the community. So Diwali is the first one we took it, and more cultures will come in the coming weeks. So I'll explain about Diwali or Deepavali for world, what it means. One of the most popular festivals of Hinduism, Diwali symbolizes the spiritual victory of light over darkness, good over evil, and knowledge over ignorance. Light is a metaphor for knowledge and consciousness. During the celebration, temples, homes, shops, and office buildings are brightly illuminated. Diwali is the festival of lights and love. People meet each other and exchange sweets and wishes. I brought sweets. I'll keep it on the food table. So it symbolizes, so it's mostly celebrated in northern India as Ram victory over Ravana, that is called as good over evil. In the southern part of India, the Lord Krishna defeated the bad guys, so it's called a celebration as a victory or Deepavali. Next slide. So what is Diwali for Gungahlin Community Council? It's in my own words. Diwali for Gungahlin means prosperity with bright minds and ideas. Positive economic contributors such as cultural diversity and mutual respect are the main winners for Gungahlin economic prosperity. What it means is coexistence, multicultural, diversified community coexistence in peaceful and loving people. Gungahlin is emerging as an example of multicultural Australia in peaceful coexistence and celebrating diverse festivals throughout the year, in addition to our love for sports. Good over evil and knowledge over ignorance are the shining words in every resident of Gungahlin. Gungahlin is emerging as most environment friendly for business and environment protection. Mulgill's flat is an example. I would like to request Mr. Gupta, the Honorable MLA, to lighten the lamp as a symbol of Diwali.
Thank you, Prasad. Prasad is stepping left. The Chief Minister of GCC is involved with the celebrating Diwali in the Assembly as well on 31st of October. So we wish you even bright and white, but please have a look around and most welcome to come and join us.
I'll request Minister Shane Rattenbury to come and lighten the Diwali lamp, please.
Thank you.
I request our President, GCC President Peter, to come and lighten the lamp. Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you. I request Mr. Willie to come and lighten the lamp, please. Willie, our community elder. I request Kevin, our friend and community elder, light on the lamp, please.
Reached elder status, Kevin.
The old people, is it? There you go. Which one is it? Just wait. There we go. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Thanks. I'll just jump to a quick intro. Everyone will know Deepak Rajgupta. Deepak became the ACT's newest MLA upon the retirement of Megan Fitzharris some months ago now, and it's our great honour to have him come along to his first GCC meeting and tell us a little bit about himself and about what he's learnt from Gungahlin and what he sees for the future. So over to you, Deepak. Just click on.
Thank you, Peter. Good evening, everyone, and good evening all the... And good evening to viewers on the Facebook and social media as well. Thank you, everyone. My name is Deepak Rajgupta, as you all must have known by now, and I've been resident of Gungahlin for 20 years now. And I've been to GCC meeting before, but I didn't realize that now you started putting food, so I'll be more frequent now. And so what I've seen in Gungahlin in all these 20 years I've been living is like I've seen Gungahlin and my children grow together. So the same teething problem you have in a growing township and a family have experienced that. So that was the passion. I started working on the community work. So my elevation to assembly wasn't overnight, or I just not parachuted there. I had to go through what you call in Chinese 1,000-mile journey start from step one. So my step one was started working with the community. And after that, I started working with the association and then Multicultural Council here in ACT. Then I got a chance to work with the Australia-India Business Council. This is where I started promoting Canberra. With seeing the bilateral trade improving between Australia and India. And this is where my journey started with the political side, because I started interacting with a lot of politicians. So my story has always been I've been thrown at the deep end, and this opportunity is no different. So in cricketing term, I've come and slog overs. So I have to come and started hitting around. And that's what it started. When I started, it was 3 sitting weeks, and my learning curve really started from there. So as a new kid on the block, I have a lot of ambition. My wish list for Gungahlin is quite huge. But I'm taking a small, tangible steps which are achievable. So one of the things I wanted was to bring some kind of vibrancy to Gungahlin Town Centre. As you know, after the light rail, Gungahlin Town Centre is really started to come to life, and it's really booming. And we can do further to get it more vibrant and get better use of the town centre and to the businesses as well. As I've been hearing, some businesses have not done well in past few years and so, but I think things are on mend, and they are the footprint is really improving. So one of the things I've been planning to do is to have a night market, and that is something I've been going out and about talking to people, and everyone is loving this idea of having a night market, because again it is something which will also help the homegrown businesses in Gungahlin, because I know the community market has started a few months back, and I've gone and met a lot of people there. There are people who are homegrown business owners, somebody's selling organic honey or cookies and all. But it's not about all that. It is about whatever you want to bring to the town. Being Gungahlin is a very ethnic diversity town and region, and we have a lot of people from different backgrounds. So that is one of the things I'm planning to do. And I had meeting with the Rotary Club. I've spoken to Peter as well. But we need someone to organize that, and government can look for the funding for that. So that is one of the things to bring vibrancy and to complement the businesses around the town. Other thing I started is about cleaning a drive near the Yerraby Pond. I think that is one of the most beautiful region of our town, but it is struggling because One is lack of parking, so I put a petition as well for put extra parking on the waterfront, because a lot of businesses are closing because lack of parking. And some reason we are a bit spoiled in Canberra, especially in Gungahlin. I remember when I came here, I could park my car right in front of a marketplace and go and do my shopping and come back. But because now there's not much of space, people, if they don't find parking, they move on. So please help me on doing that petition. It's on my line on my website, deepakrajgupta.com.au, so we can have more parking there, and people can also come and visit Yerby Pond. Now, other thing, coming from the business background, I'm very much interested about promoting the small local businesses. And I've gone out and about and spoken to a lot of businesses in Gungahlin Town Centre and beyond as well. What we can do, so we've been heard about how we can bring more offices and the employment to Gungahlin Town Centre. So one of them is, I know we can only have some government and federal departments here. We know the DHS is planning to come. They announced that 2017 they'll be putting a office for 290 people. But I think more than that, we need local businesses to boom as well. Small businesses, IT firms, accounting. I spoke about data center, small data center or data mining centers and all. That will boost our economy of the town center. And the reason for that is a very young demographic we got in Gungahlin. I think around 45% people are under age of 25. They will need employment. And if we can start thinking that this is not a public service town, this is a town, especially with the kind of people moving into Gungahlin and Canberra, we can have this as a small business district, Gungahlin, and it has all the potential now. Since coming of light rail, I think it has opened us to the world that we can do businesses here. This can be a small business district of Canberra. So those are the things I'm working on at the moment, and hopefully, as I said, their wish list is too long and huge, but again, when you come to the assembly, you find out, sometimes it's not easy to get whatever your wish lists are. But again, I'm working towards things. As Shane presentation, I was the one who moved this motion in the assembly about the climate change strategy. Another thing I moved in the parliament is a motion along with Minister Orr is having a community center situated in EPIC. So that will be a state-of-art community center with the sitting capacity of around 1,000 people. Because again, our community is growing, we need big centers. I mean, we have Gungahlin College here, but it does only cater up to 300. And some of you must have gone to some of the community events. They hold up to 1,000 people in an event. So that's a growing need of our town. So that has been moved, and the feasibility study has started on that as well. And what that will do is also it will complement other businesses like caterers, decorators, event management, transporters. That will also come with that. So some of the things I'm planning to do is for our future generation, how are we going to leave this place for our future generation, which are really young, and as we have to be conscious about a lot of things. Other things in my mind I'm planning to do is about the water stress. We are all talking about climate change and all, but water retention is also equally important. In 30 years' time, the water usage or availability will be 1/3 what we got now. We're talking about, we are paying a lot of things on electricity, the costs are going high. It will rocket, roof will be rocketed to the roof, because if you don't have water for irrigating our farms and all, the fruits, vegetable, everything will go up. So we got to think from that point of view as well. Of course, most of these things come with cost. So we have to sometimes compromise with cost and what we're going to need and how we're going to sustain our environment. Thank you.
Right, are there any questions for Deepak? Yep, all right, hang on. I'll just scoot around the front. Just here at the front.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. I think recently you had a meeting at Nunzio's restaurant with a few of the locals down at the Yerby section. Unfortunately, I was away at the time and I missed meeting you there. A few of the issues that got brought up there were included, I think, land tax for one thing, where there's seemingly a bit of a disparity with the way people are charged land tax or commercial rates on the commercial residential section. So I think there's been a number of people who've been trying to work out with ACCU revenue, what the land tax situation is on a building.
Those multi-storied, multi-use apartments there.
Yeah, well, a house, because if you look around the metro area, I think a lot of those leases are residential leases with up to 80 square metres of commercial space. So you've got a 240 square metre house and 80 square metres of commercial, potentially, but people are getting charged, for the whole block on a commercial. So I think a lot of people are finding that a little bit difficult. But if we look at the Yarrabee area, which is where my main question comes to, when I first bought in 2002, in the Yarrabee estate, they had this beautiful Nellie Hamilton Avenue on the drawing, with irrigated part all the way down to the lake. And funnily enough, back then, there was going to be a tram right down to the lake. Okay. But the tram disappeared and came back many years later. But that's why the White Avenue was going to come up through Gungahlin Place, over the hill and down to the lake, and bring people to the lake. So that all died off. What we had then is buses going around the little commercial section down the bottom and up and around. But the buses don't travel there and haven't done for a number of years now. I've asked. They said there was a problem with the buses because they couldn't negotiate the corner to go back up Nellie Hamilton Avenue. I asked, well, can you make it just a one-way loop where you go down Nellie Hamilton, make it across Phyllis Ashton, a one-way street, and go back up around, and that will bring people to the lake. But at the moment, if you want to go to the lake, you walk. Okay, that's good, but it means that the commercial area down there has missed out on the potential that was envisaged in the first place. And being from Gungahlin and seeing the whole area, I'd just like you to take into account that little area down there and think, you want to have parking. What can you do to help the people down there who don't have a bus anymore, don't have a tram, don't have irrigation down like Ford does? But Ford, the government still pays for water in Ford, but because there was a drought on at the time, Nellie Hamilton missed out, and that beautiful little trip up from Gungahlin down to the lake is no longer what was envisaged in the first place.
I have to read a history of Gungahlin with your questions, so thank you so much. Yes, this is what I had a discussion with at the New Zealand restaurant, and a lot of owners and residents, they came around there. As I mentioned earlier, we want to put some more parking in that area because the reason all the businesses are fading and now they're complaining about their tax and all of residential and commercial is because the businesses are not booming there due to lack of car park. And that's the one thing petition I put on there is we can put some extra car park. So I've taken that petition to the Minister Steve's office, and they are working on it. And we have taken also advice from the resident over there, how would you like and where would like. 80% of them are in favor of putting extra cars there, but around some of them, they are not happy about it. As I said, it's a beautiful part of our town, and we have to maintain it. And it's not about the parking, but it's the cleanliness as well. I mean, I usually go for the walk in the morning in Yarrabee Pond, and sometimes it's really sad to see amount of rubbish you find in the morning. And I mean, government is doing what they can all do, but I think the onus also come on to the people who are using it too. Other thing which came to my notice about there was provision of extra bins. So with this ACT budget this year, we'll be providing 17,000 bins around the town. So Gungahlin, Yarrabee Pond will also get some bin and collection of the rubbish as well. Other thing is about, you mentioned about the bus routes and all. I think there has been changes to the bus network as we all have seen recently. But what feedback I got from the office was that there was not enough patronage for the bus to continue there for all that time. So again, we have to make for the new roads, we have to change some of the routes. So that's the reason the bus has not started going there. Maybe, we talked about electric rickshaw or something like that, that might come sometime later on so people can come to the Gungahlin Town Centre and from there they can go to the Yarrabee Pond, or to be very honest, it's not a long walk. If you it takes around 5 to 7 minutes. But the main thing is we have to maintain that place because it's a beautiful part of our town, and it's sad to say at this stage, sometime when you go there, it is not very good, and that's one of the complaints of the people who have paid heavy price of building the houses and all. They are not getting that kind of service. So that has been taken on board. I'll be having another round of meeting with all those groups. I had few weeks back, or months back, I would say, and then I will have all those questions which you have asked. I've already put to the relevant minister, and I'll have the concrete answer for you then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a couple more questions in time, so one here and one over.
Thanks, Deepak. I share with you your the passion for what is a beautiful part of Gungahlin, that is Yarrabee Pond. But I'm very concerned about the idea of basically expanding asphalt car parks on the waterfront there. That's not going to increase the amenity of that area. It's going to affect the businesses. It's going to affect everyone's use of that pond.
So you're saying putting extra car park won't help?
Well, I'm saying turning waterfront into car park is not beneficial.
Not putting all off on the waterfront. I think this is the we started working on study where we can put there some green patches which are not used that much, and this is where probably, and we're not saying we are putting 100 car parks, maybe 30 or 40 of car parks. That will at least increase the footprints over there, and the businesses which are suffering because of lack of people not going there, and they're complaining because of car park, they can't find a car place to go to the restaurant. Yeah. And the other thing what they do is on the side of the restaurant, they are parking anyway. And some of them, they get tickets as well. So that shows that there's a need for extra car park. But we are saying it's not in 50s and 100, but maybe around 20 or 30 car park. That will at least suffice for this time, and to help out the businesses because they are losing customers.
Yeah, I think the key piece there is if we're going to add more hard surfaces, we have to make sure we're also adding more trees to compensate for that. Certainly several years ago, ACT Roads did do a design to put parking into Nellie Hamilton in the median strip in the middle, angle parking in there, and that was actually quite a high priority project some years ago now. So that design's been done, but apparently doesn't have unanimous support of all the traders down there. So I think we'd certainly like to get involved, we the community council, and with the relevant stakeholders to help push that.
But the
through.
traders,
So,
they wanted extra car parks.
Yep.
It's the traders who are there. I'm not sure which one is saying they doesn't want it. There's some resident, they don't want car parks there, but people who are owning businesses, they want extra car park there.
But, if we can find some way of parking people somewhere else and shuttling them in or something, great. But the mindset we all have at the moment, of course, is that we park nearby. I've got a question here, and then that one here.
Thanks, Deepak. You came from the business background. I would like to put a question for business. Canberra is always struggling to improve the economy and get the taxes, and we have seen the rates hike and the land taxes hike in the last few years in the current government. Is there any plans, or you have any plans to the government, or helping to get the Amazon fulfillment center, or businesses like IKEA, or the cargo transport from Canberra to the rest of the country or rest of the world? Any plans to improve the economy and get the income to the government?
Thank you, Prasad. I think economy of Canberra is pretty good. We got the lowest employment in the country. But as far rates and taxes are concerned, yes, we all know they are high. But I tell you what, Canberra doesn't have a luxury of like Western Australia. They get $30 or $20 billion out of mining revenue. Only place we can generate our revenue is through taxes, and through also sale of land. So we don't have luxury of, or we are not an agricultural land. We don't have any other big industries. So only way we can do is by collecting taxes. But in saying so, we are the lowest one if you compare with the rest of the region in Australia, New South Wales or Victoria, where the average fortnight wages are 17 to 1800. In Canberra it is 2,400 or somewhere around that. We are traveling stress-free now. I don't know how many of you travel from Gungahlin to city, but at this stage it takes, even on the peak time, not more than 20 to 23 minutes. You don't have that luxury in any other capital city, I would say, around the world. So as I know we all are paying, I'm paying too, but the thing is the amenities and the facilities we are getting here, I think we should be very happy and retaining a AAA rating. Considering other things you're talking about, we already got IKEA in not far away from Gungahlin. There are some, I think the planning people from the department will also speak about, there's some land on East Gungahlin being reserved for large commercial spaces, around 65,000 square meter or so. So this will be out in the market, and as the population is growing, I think there'll be some bid for the commercial people to come and set up business in Gungahlin. But we have to start from the small step. We get small business coming and moving and occupying the office spaces. We'll see the large commercial entities will follow them as well.
Right. Just one more question, and then we'll.
You mentioned more bins in public spaces around Canberra. The Harrison Ovals, 3 of them don't have any bins whatsoever. When they have a sports council, often rubbish is left on there. Yes. Regardless, when people just use the oval, they have nowhere to put their rubbish. Can we get 3 bins for each of the ovals at Harrison?
Definitely. As I said, Minister Steele has approved with the budget about 17,000 bins around the town. So Gungahlin going to get fair share of it, because Gungahlin has maximum number of parks and playgrounds. So those will be rolling out soon. And it's not only placing them, but also removing the rubbish as well. So that is happening as we speak.
Do you think Harrison will get them?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
One last question online.
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. So we just need some quick responses here. There's a comment here: need a hospital in Gungahlin.
Okay. Yes, everyone wants hospital in Gungahlin, but at this stage there is no inclination to put one, because the population doesn't demand one at this stage. So we got a health center which is working well. Maybe there could be another health center in Taylor or Moncrief area, where the young population is booming.
Okay, next one. Thanks for the bins for Yerraby Ponds. Can we get lights for the Amaroo side of the pond so we can use the walking paths at night?
Yes, definitely. That's another plan, because of going 100% on renewable energy. There'll be some solar lights put around the parks and all, so that will complement those dark spots around not only in Amaroo but other parts of the town as well.
And this may have actually been covered before. The whole of Gungahlin needs a parking review.
Yes, we are working on that. There is strategy planning going on for that, and it is one of the things on the top of the city government.
All right, well, thank you very much, Deepak. Deepak, of course, is very active and around with a number of events in Gungahlin, and of course you can find him online and through all the new government websites.
Thanks
very much.
Coming Saturday, there will be barbecue. If you have more questions, please come. I'll be more than happy to see you there. And on 2nd of November, we'll be doing a big cleanup of Yerraby Pond. So please come and join me and my team for that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Deepak. While Stephen is just getting his microphone on, I'll just give a little bit of a brief intro to this. I think most residents of Gungahlin will be familiar with the high-rise residential towers that have been built on the eastern edge of Gungahlin. Most people know them as the Infinity Towers, which are just 2 of what is now about 10 or 11 high-rise residential buildings that are built there. In late 2016, on the basis of feedback from residents, the Community Council approached the Planning Minister and the Environment Planning Sustainable Development Directorate and said, what's going on here? This doesn't seem to be consistent with the precinct code and the territory planning system for the town centre in Gungahlin. How did these buildings come to be? And what was initiated late in 2016 was a process called the Gungahlin Town Centre Planning Refresh. That took some time to get underway. There was a series of consultations through 2017 and 2018. There was a report produced that some of you may have read. And now we're getting to the stage, or the government has got to the stage, where they're about to put the recommendations from that planning refresh into the precinct code and the territory plan itself. So it's taken nearly 3 years to get to this point, but I think the key piece is that community engagement, the role of the community councils has led to this change, and it's been pretty exciting to be part of that process, even if it's taken 3 years. It's still exciting to have got there. There is an open consultation on the proposed changes to the precinct code, and Stephen Giancakis from the Environment Planning Sustainable Development Directorate, and he is from a smaller group within there, and he'll tell us what that is, has come along to give us an overview of what's been included in the precinct code, and talk to us also about the drop-in meeting session that'll be on Saturday the 12th, which is next Saturday, where you can come along and ask more questions if you can't get them answered tonight. So without any further ado, Steve.
Peter, thank you. I think we need your technology. Peter, thank you for the opportunity to present to the Gungahlin Community Council. It's been probably almost 11 months since we were last here, so thank you again. I'd like to introduce Caroline O'Neill, who's our Acting Executive Group Manager of Planning, Land and Development Policy, and Sayed Ali from the team. The variation we...
Sorry.
It's okay.
You know, I'm just...
Hopefully it's...
I'm not quite sure. I'm having mouse issues. Oh, hang on. The mouse is... There it is. Wow, it's super fast.
It works.
Okay, give me a wave and I'll move the slides.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for that.
So we can move on. So last week the variation number 364 to the territory plan, which relates to Gungahlin Town Centre planning refresh, was released. It culminates a number of years worth of background investigation, some earlier engagement, as can be listed on the screen. So as Peter had mentioned, back in 2016, the refresh was actually initiated, and that was based on 3 identified themes that have been raised by the community: building heights and character, traffic parking, active travel, and requests for improvement to public open spaces. There was a round of community engagement undertaken in 2017. Sometime after that, so in probably 2018, earlier in 2018, we also, in response to some community representations, also opened some considerations about community facilities, and predominantly relating to the undeveloped community facility land within Gungahlin East. Back in November last year, the planning refresh was released, and that was online. That was supported by a concept draft variation that documented how the proposed changes, or the planning changes in the refresh, would be implemented in a future variation. It was also supported by a consultation report, and all those documents are online. So we are now, we're now in the middle of the draft variation process, whereby the public consultation is now underway. Consultation closes on the 18th of November, and all comments would be welcomed. I'll give you details at the end about how to address and send those comments. So what this flowchart in essence demonstrates, or the process that has led to the point of getting the draft variation out. So the planning refresh made a number of recommendations that they were interpreted into a draft variation document. We then went through the internal government processes, as all government policy does, and we've released the draft variation. Importantly, the draft variation was released with interim effect. What that means is the recommendations and the policy changes that are contained within the document have immediate effect. So at the end of the 6-week public consultation process, all public submissions will be considered, a consultation report will be prepared, and a recommended final draft variation will be referred to the Minister for Planning and Land Management. The Minister will then refer the variation to the Legislative Assembly's Standing Committee on Planning and Urban Renewal for their considerations. The committee may decide to call an inquiry, and if the committee calls an inquiry, they have 6 months to supply their report. If an inquiry is convened, there will be opportunities through the committee processes of the Assembly for community to provide submissions, present in front of the committee their concerns, their issues, their aspirations, and then the committee will consider all the information that has been provided to them, including information from government, and then the government will respond to the recommendations made by the Standing Committee. In response to those recommendations, the government may withdraw the draft variation, revise or approve it by the minister. The minister then formally tables a draft variation for disallowance in the Assembly, which in essence is the approval mechanism, the approval processes. If the Legislative Assembly does not disallow, it's negative, but in essence, if they don't approve the variation, then a commencement date is set and then the variation commences. So in terms of the statutory processes, we're probably talking, depending on whether the committee will hold a public inquiry, somewhere between 6 and 12 months for the process to be completed, and depending on how it all goes and whether the variation is commenced or withdrawn. Thank you, Peter. So in terms of the main changes that are being recommended through the draft variations, these build upon the recommendations in the snapshot document that was released late last year. And in essence, the recommendations relate to providing more definitive and certainty about building heights in Gungahlin East. So removing the former or the current building envelope provisions to go to maximum building. And there's a cross section later in the presentation that describes that or graphically represents that. Introducing maximum building heights along Flemington Road, again in East Gungahlin, between 8 and 10 stories, and then stepping down to between 6 and 3 stories around the periphery of Gungahlin East. And stepping down is important, so it's respecting and reflecting the residential areas around the periphery. There's also the introduction of minimum building heights along Flemington Road, so that we are endeavouring to achieve built form outcome that provides opportunities for activation, it provides bulk, and it provides opportunities for people to go enjoy themselves, whether it's in restaurants, whether it's in employment, whether it's in residential. And also minimum 3 stories along part of the Valley Way. Thank you. The recommendations also have reduced the overall commercial office floor space target now down to 100,000 square metres over the long term. Previously, 200,000 square metres of commercial office space had been identified. Commercial office space is not retail, it's not trades, it's employment based. Big government departments that the previous MLAs have talked about. And I'll explain that as we go. With the reduction of commercial office space, that we have introduced or removed the existing restriction on residential uses being permitted within that Gungahlin East. Again, looking at trying to activate, leverage off the light rail and government's investment in public transport. So whilst we've reduced our target for commercial office space and introduced residential, we are very conscious that we do want to encourage and preserve land for large commercial office spaces. So 2 sites have been reserved for large commercial office spaces, and totaling 65,000 square metres of gross floor area and there will be a diagram later that shows that locates those two sites. In terms of the community facilities, the current territory plan notionally identifies where the future community facility sites are. Upon reflection, those sites are probably not in the most ideal locations, being in close proximity to public transport, to the retail core of Gungahlin Town Centre. So we've introduced a provision whereby through a community needs assessment, community facility uses could be provided as gross floor area within a multi-use development, rather than being on a standalone site surrounded by car parking. It's not the best use of valuable land within a town centre. We've also introduced a maximum building heights in Gungahlin Northwest for those undeveloped and underutilised sites. The buildings that are constructed in Gungahlin Northwest or under construction or have received development approval are not affected by these building heights. We might just move on to the... So this is a graphic which is indicating where the proposed changes are. The stars are indicating the two locations where land is being reserved for commercial office space. The yellow is where we are wanting buildings to be fronting and activating the street. The purple is allowing opportunities for community facilities to be located. No, sorry, purple. Sorry, thank you. Yes, defining maximum building heights. The purple that I can't see is about the opportunities of introducing community facility uses within the broader Gungahlin East, and then we introduce building heights and building controls. In addition to those, there are also controls about urban design, setbacks to a degree, landscape zones, which have also been incorporated into the draft variation. Thank you, Peter. So in terms of Gungahlin East, this slide or that image relates to the existing building heights, and these are going to be the new building heights that will apply to those areas that are indicated in purple. Those sites are either undeveloped or underutilised in terms of building heights. The cross sections which were in the snapshot graphically represents the principle of building envelopes. So in essence, buildings are stepping away from the streets and stepping into the middle of the blocks or the sections, whereas we're looking for more of an urban outcome. So buildings are addressing and are fronting the streets and stepping down. Thank you, Peter. Community facilities. The territory plan requires or specifies 6 hectares of community facility land to be located within Gungahlin Town Centre. For 2.2 hectares of community facility land has already been provided. So the remaining 3.8 hectares are notionally indicated in Gungahlin East, as well as a site adjacent to Anthony Rolfe Avenue. What we've identified or introduced is an option for community facilities to actually be located anywhere within Gungahlin East precinct, whether that's within a dedicated mixed-use community facility site or whether it's a mixed-use commercial residential site. That will be worked through as part of a future community needs assessment. The areas where the 2 dots are those locations for commercial office space. Thank you. So in terms of a statutory process, all comments, as I mentioned earlier, are welcomed. They can be forwarded to those contact details which are on the screen. It's probably also worthwhile just noting that any comments made will be publicly released by the Directorate, with the exception of personal contact information. And we do that on privacy, but also for transparency, so that the community can see all the public submissions that have been received, and then as we move forward, considering those comments specifically, we will be providing a consultation report about what the issue was and how we've responded to it, whether that has led to changes in the document. That will all be documented. Thank you, Peter. So I suppose I just put this up just to show, I think this is earlier this year, an air photograph of Gungahlin, obviously, and the territory plan map. This statutory process is not rezoning land. We are not taking land away from a commercial zoning. We are looking at using the zonings that we have in place and finessing or responding to issues that have been raised. We might leave it there. The next one's just a thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Any questions from the crowd? We'll start here with Prasad and then back here and then across to Kevin.
Good day, Stephen. Thanks for presenting the territory plan. I'm looking more about the community facilities like Palmerston Community Hall. Is there any place marked for community halls in Gungahlin area?
If I've understood your question, is there opportunities for a community house or a community meeting? Is that
community halls?
Community hall.
We get a lot of requests coming to us saying, "I need to have a meeting space," and I think that's where is there scope for that within the community uses you've identified?
Clearly. So, as part of the community needs assessment, a range of community facility activities and uses, including community hall, will be considered. That will then be assessed against what the existing provision is within Gungahlin, what is, I suppose, a typical best practice provision from either elsewhere around Canberra or around Australia, and if there's a shortfall, then there will be consideration about a recommendation for a community hall or other community uses.
So I will jump in here because I've got the microphone, so I win. So will there be a process on a site-by-site basis where the government will say, look, we want to provision some community use facilities on this site and issue a tender for people to respond, or is there going to be a separate consultation to identify needs that will then get built, or how does that actually happen?
I think it will work jointly. So the community needs assessment will be the first part of that, to see where are the shortfalls, where are the opportunities, and what needs to be provided. It will then be a matter for government about what is the best mechanism for those facilities to be provided. Is it a standalone site on the periphery, or is it best use or best located within a mixed use? And a community hall may actually be best located within a mixed use multi-storey development rather than being a glorified shed, shall I say, on the periphery surrounded by car parking.
Yeah, no, I understood. And we have currently two assessments being done, one by the SLA and one by the EPSDD on different sites, not far from here, and in both, one in Casey and one in Ngunnawal, which is similar requests around, we need to assess the community need, and it would be nice to see that holistically. So do you see that as something EPSDD would do, these community needs assessment?
Yes, in terms of Gungahlin Town Centre, yes.
Yep.
And what the assessment will be looking at is the requirements within Gungahlin district, not only the town centre.
Right.
Whereas I think the situation for Casey is more localised.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, we look forward to that in anticipation. Next question.
Thank you. Could we possibly go back to the slide that shows the northwest section where you've indicated that one? So you look there with the purple on the diagram on the top right, and did you say that they're looking at potentially underutilised sites and changing the building height there?
So I can answer that, but it helps if you've actually read the document.
Right.
The top 7, the purple 7, is where the YMCA single-storey childcare centre is. So that's underutilised in the sense that it's a one-storey building, could be, under the new proposed changes, up to 7. Now, as Stephen pointed out, some of these sites have already got a building on them which exceed the proposed new heights, and they'll be there for the next 30 years.
Well, that's right. So my point is that the won't get started, but the approvals are pretty well buggered up for the high rise that you've already let go. Now, there's already buildings on those existing sites, and to say now that it's underutilised, so you want to allow it to whack up to 10 stories or so. Well, 7, but there's a childcare centre, there's the emergency services centre, there's other gyms and things like that. I don't think that's underutilised. I think it's just not high rise, which doesn't seem to be the thought of the day.
The maximum building heights were in response to, I suppose, the uncertainty about, in the event there is a redevelopment or a development occurring, what is the building height. So to move away from the opportunities for the higher rise developments, and those provisions have now lapsed, we're introducing maximum building heights to actually provide clear certainty for the community and also for the lessees of those lands that if sometime in the future they choose to develop their land or sell their land and a developer acquires the land, the rules are clear from day one.
I know. So in the other area of development, you've said you've got 10 stories along the corridor, reducing to 3 to 6 stories, where those building heights are closer to residential areas so that it's more appropriate at that. Whereas at the moment we've got 22 stories and across the road you've got residential areas. So I would still say that you're going against your own advice there by saying, well, let's have buildings up to, 14, 7, 12, 7 stories, which again are right next to 2-storey townhouses and residences.
It's a case of, I suppose, stepping down, but if...
22 stories to 2 stories is not stepping down, sorry.
If you believe that is a concern to you, please put that in writing and that will be considered as we move forward.
Okay. Yep. Okay, Kevin, next question.
Maybe we can go to the slide with the plan of the thing.
One back, one forward. Sorry,
2.
One back.
Keep going. That one. Can I come out and point something? Over here we have grasslands,
yes,
not residential. Why are you now restricting this to 3? Because surely this can be higher. What's the rationale for stepping down on this side when there is no effect on residential, effectively?
It's a case of looking at those opportunities. The focus of the residential is where the activity and public transport is. So whilst this is not a significant difference, we do want to be able to develop the land so that we are responding to the surrounds. So your point is correct. Obviously, it is grasslands. Having high density in this location moves the centre of activity away from the core areas, and we want those sort of activities to be more centralised rather than dispersing the activities or moving the activities to an edge, which may have unintended consequences for the surrounding residents of Franklin if it was at a higher level.
Well, I'm sorry, there are no residences down here, right? There are residences over here, but there are no residences down here. The same argument, you didn't apply it up there. You put a lot of activity up there, away from the centre. So it seems to be a little bit illogical.
I think it's a situation where happy to have another look at that. If the community thinks that is worthwhile. So whether it's a case of additional building heights or whether it's balancing out the building heights, that's something that we are happy to have a further look at.
At the moment now, with the one that you've got, the only development that I can see that can occur down there are 3-storey, essentially they'll be 3-storey townhouses. That's what's going to happen. It's already happened. You've already got some buildings down there that are 3-storey townhouses that don't seem to meet your new precinct code, which is a bit strange. The real thing that I'm really worried about, of course, is that you're taking away potential office space. There is an opportunity for increasing the amount of office space by increasing the heights, particularly on that side.
So in relation to office space, Gungahlin historically has not been able to attract federal government employees, as you know. And I suppose we are responding by retaining two relatively large sites. 65,000 square metres equates to possibly somewhere between 3,000 to 3,500 employees. So the opportunities are there, and probably the other aspect to note, the government has levers that it can pull. It can release any land within the commercial 2 zoning for offices. So whilst the indicative land release is a 4-year program, it is reviewed annually, and government is able to tweak and adjust those.
Okay.
So it will not happen. It will not happen unless you make it.
And one of the other aspects that we've had to also consider is the government position in the planning strategy, that 70% of all new residential is within the urban area. Gungahlin Town Centre is an existing urban area. The current statistics in terms of the split between urban intensification, urban renewal and greenfields is about on average about 63% over the last 3 years. So we're trying to balance residential development and also retaining opportunities to attract office buildings and future employment.
Okay. Well, Kevin, just remember, no one can hear you when you haven't got the microphone, but I do. Look, this continues to be a big concern. The reduction in the amount of office space reserved is based on if I quote the refresh report, I think lack of demand. Really, there's nothing the Gungahlin community can do to bring a large-scale employer to Gungahlin, but the ACT government can through any range of incentives. And I think that's going to be one of the key pieces of our strategy. It's no good just saying every 5 years that we're not getting any interest in commercial space in Gungahlin, therefore we'll keep chopping it down. And I appreciate that's not necessarily your problem to solve, Stephen. But this is an opportunity that if we don't capture it, it will be lost forever, as we've already lost the Northwest Precinct, originally scheduled to be a office park, and now it's been relabelled to urban living, I think is the term. I do have a question, but someone else asked first. So,
mine was just to the Northwest Precinct, and it's just the changing the heights, like where the telephone exchange is in the YMCA to 7 stories. Having that change of height, is that going to increase the value of the land?
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
The reason I can't answer that, we're looking at it from a planning perspective, not what a land could be worth. So whilst there is a new requirement that has to be balanced against what the previous requirement was, but also it still has to go through a statutory approval process. So whilst we might have 7 stories, it's still up to the proponent, the leasee, to put a proposal to government and to the community that indicates that it meets all the requirements.
So that was part of my question. The next, following on from the answer, is if it does increase the value of the land, and it can be seen that it can be 7 stories, and then the commercial rates charged on that property are for what can be built there, not what is built there, that would obviously make the YMCA unprofitable, and the multi-million-dollar investment by Telephone, Telstra.
I understand rates are based on uses permitted by the Crown lease. So if for the YMCA, and happy to look at this one in more detail, if the Crown lease says for childcare centres, then I would imagine that is how rates are calculated. If it was a mixed-use development, then rates are calculated quite differently, and if it was a subtenancy of the development, then rates would be proportionate to that. But as I said, happy to have a look at that one specifically.
Okay, thanks.
Currently, under the current precinct code, they could build up to 10 stories there. All of those towers have had development applications to vary their lease conditions to enable them to not build an office but to build a mixed-use facility. So that process went through. Any more questions? Okay, I just had a quick one. Stephen, you mentioned here requirements for better build design. Where does that? I've started looking through the proposed draft precinct code. How does that? Where is that written down? I can't see. Make this building less rubbish.
There's some cross sections in the document that talks about interfaces, requirements for awnings, restrictions on blank facades. It's in the detail in towards the back.
All right. Well, you could have had a picture at the bottom of Infinity Towers for examples of bad, but anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering what is that south side vacant area is for? Is there any plan to do anything with that?
Sorry.
That the grassland
is. The grass. It's a nature reserve, so absolutely no plans. The grassland has to be protected, and government has no plans to do anything further with the grasslands, which are there to protect the grasslands and the items that are that call it home.
Spotted sun moth and the
golden something.
So yeah, that's fine. It's good to keep that. But minister was talking about planting more trees. Could that be used that for purpose?
The environmental values of this area relates to the land in a grassland state. So minimal tree coverage. It relates to the grass. So by bringing in trees, it changes the characteristics of the land. So I would imagine no within this sort of area, because we want to maintain, but it would be opportunities for additional planting within the linear park, opportunities within street trees and the like.
Any other questions? One back there.
Thank you. Yeah, just regarding that grassland there. So, at the moment, there's animals on agistment there. So there's cattle. There may be a few sheep around there as well. So that was old cattle paddocks. So presumably before they were cattle paddocks, it was bushland. Just like you'd look up in Mulligan's Flat, anywhere around there, it's bushland. So I'd question the sensitivity of that grassland, considering that you've got cattle that feed there to help actually keep the grass down because of brush fire risk. And that, again, based on the territory's overall plan of making it greener, that's a pretty significant hot zone, especially if you looked at MLA Rattenbury's chart there. So again, I'm sorry, I'm just questioning some of the thought processes that go on inside the office. Doesn't make sense to me.
In Stephen's defence, it's a little bit outside the territory at the town centre planning refresh scope, but it's a good point, and clearly as a member of the community it's raised it. It's something we should perhaps go and revisit at some stage. Any more questions on the town centre planning refresh? Yes, so and one more. Okay, so we do have one online, so or at least two.
Yep. And I haven't been paying too much attention, unfortunately, because I've been on this, so let me know if we've already covered this. Can you comment on the ratio or density of social housing in the plan, in the precinct?
The government has policies relating to social housing, community housing and affordable housing, and those policies will be implemented and mandated as government releases land.
Okay, so according to government policy?
According to government policy, so if there's changes or increases to those policies, development would need to respond.
Sure. And the other one, I know we have touched on the business precinct reduction or floor space reduction. But again, it's coming back to that. Are there any specific justifications or evidence for the reduction of this? As we've all kind of been saying here, this is something that the residents feel we're out of sync on.
I suppose that the 100,000 and even the 200,000 before from 2011 was a target. It was a projection based on information available at the time, what was happening with other town centres, what was happening with government departments at the day or of the day, as well as, and things change. So whilst the target has been reduced, the opportunity for further or additional commercial land is still there. So there's nothing that we have done that has negated or removed that opportunity. What we've added is the opportunity to bring residential in to provide, as I've said, some activation of this space, some development, but also being mindful of that it is prudent to reserve and dedicate reserved land for commercial office space. So it's a fine balance.
All right. It's late. Are there any other final questions? I would encourage people to download the amended precinct code. So just for my own detail.
That's not the document. That's the old one. So that
no, this is the one that's been marked up. It's got the changes in it.
Yeah, the actual variation.
So why is this on the website?
That's on the Your Say website, but there will be a link to the actual variation document. Let me send it to you.
There is a link on the Your Say website to the actual variation document, which appears to have an unmarked up version of the new precinct code.
We'll check it.
In there. So I mean,
Thank you for
the point this is useful is it tells me what's changed. If I just look at a precinct code, much as I'd love to be familiar with all 57 pages of it, I'm not. So this is very useful. And so when I see in here things like, here's the traffic flow diagram from Gungahlin, diagram deleted, suggests to me that there is no plan for a traffic flow diagram at the town centre. So there's a bunch of questions that have arisen out of this that I won't bore everyone else with, but there's nothing, I see very little in this that addresses anything other than height. There's not much here around amenity and open space, and I don't see much in here around better active travelling, walking and cycling in around the town centre captured in this. So I don't feel like the refresh has captured those key elements in addition to height, which we covered, and there was strong and consistent feedback on. So
the variation obviously only deals with the planning requirements. The improvements for active travel, the refresh identified a number of gaps or shortcomings in the networks, and Transport Canberra and City Services are working through those.
I appreciate it's late, but the planning designs are impacted by this. So, for example, the fact we now have 3,500 units or people in the Northwest Precinct, that's a failure of... It's happened. Exactly how it happened is kind of not the point. Now that it's happened, how do we deal with that? How do we improve access to green space for those people? How do we improve access to and from the town centre for those people? Some of the questions we had earlier around how does Nellie Hamilton work as an avenue to Yerrabee Pond when you can't get down there? The planning rules around where you put stuff ends up impacting traffic, parking, cycling, walking, all of those things. So they're the sort of questions that were in the precinct code. This is how we expect traffic flow to work. It's been deleted. So,
in terms of
I'll make some time to come and work this out so that we can put something forward for the community to think about. But for those who are listening online, please have a look at the document. If you've got some thoughts, please let us know what you would like us to comment in. The more structured and more specific it is, the more useful it is. I have got emails saying I need a billion square metres of office space in Gungahlin. That's an unhelpful suggestion. But so anything that you think would impact, this is a readable document, reasonably, so I'd encourage you to have a look at it. And there is one more question. It's overtime.
Yeah, no worries. So just a quick comment here. I'll paraphrase this a little bit. Can you comment on, is there any space reserved for hospitals or emergency services?
Oh, I suppose hospitals' emergency services or additional emergency services are considered as community facilities. So we have 3.8 hectares of community facility land.
Just having been involved with the Community Council since 2010, there will not be a hospital in Gungahlin. There was a subacute hospital built on the north side at Canberra Hospital. Canberra is not big enough to have another full-fledged hospital. It's just not going to happen. The healthcare centres and other healthcare facilities, good access to and from the district in Gungahlin to the rest of the services, they're all things we can work on. So that's only feedback on that one. Stephen, thank you for coming and staying so late. It's been a pretty good, dense session tonight. We've covered a lot of meaty topics, and we've had a long and comprehensive Q&A. So thank you for all those people online who contributed and from here in the room. And we'll see you all in November. Thanks very much. Bye.